and welcome to the 7th module of the unit devoted to Yves Chevallard and the anthropological theory of the didactic, the ATD, in the project of ICMAI awardees multimedia online resources. In this module, we will consider a change of paradigm, using a didactic model based on the inquiry of questions instead of the visit of works. In the ATD, Yves Chevallard proposes to approach teaching and learning processes by considering two main pedagogical paradigms. The first one prevails in current educational systems. We call it the paradigm of visiting works, and I have already talked about it in the previous module. In it, the curriculum is proposed as a collection of contents of works of praxeologists teachers know in advance and organize for the students to learn them. Learning processes in this paradigm can be seen as guided visits to curricular contents, and the works to visit as monuments, some of them important enough to be compulsorily known by all citizens. Well, in fact, what is compulsory is not knowing the works, but having visited them. Okay, to avoid assuming this paradigm as the only possible one, we consider a broader paradigm. We always enlarge the analysis, you see? And in this broader paradigm, it includes the visit of works, but radically modifies its role. We call it the paradigm of questioning the world. And you will see that the change is significant. Now, the curriculum is not defined as a collection of works to visit, but as questions to address and to answer, of course. And if we extend the paradigm, we also need a broad notion of what inquiry about questions means. We use a schema to specify all the elements that intervene in the study of a question. This schema describes the process of inquiry, of studying and researching a given initial question, giving rise to what we call study and research paths. The inquiry processes starts when the didactic system, SXY, decides to take a question Q sub 0 into account. We call it a generating question because it generates the inquiry. To address this question, some new questions are raised, the derived questions. These questions open new paths for the inquiry. A first possible gesture of the inquiry, although not the only one, is to search some existing answers, a diamond, answers for these derived questions. The diamond represents the hallmark of the answer, the fact that this answer exists somewhere and has been labeled. Answers a diamond are looked for in media, which are any source of information, like a book, the internet, a paper, an expert, a teacher, that the purpose of which is to give information to others. Usually, answers a diamond do not provide direct answers to the derived questions. Therefore, they need to be evaluated, developed, and adapted. We do this thanks to the resources available in what we call the inquiry milieu. Finally, if we are lucky, we might be able to obtain a final answer, a heart, which is our answer to the question Q0, and also the core, the heart of the inquiry process. Do not forget that we addressed the question because we want to answer it. And there is a reason to answer it. Therefore, we will validate a heart to be sure of its pertinence and quality. And we also want to disseminate it. During the development of a heart, and also during the entire inquiry process, many new questions will possibly appear. Some will be integrated into the inquiry, others will be rejected or just left aside, opening new inquiry processes if somebody considers them interesting enough. Okay, all this was very general. Let's take an example of a study in research path, an SRP, we experienced with first-year university students of mathematics for business administration in Technocampus in 2016. The year is important, you will see why. It is about Facebook. The generating question refers to a research study developed at Princeton University in 2014, predicting that Facebook would lose 80% of its users in 2017. We presented this to the students and we asked them, can this forecast be true? And also, what would happen to other social networks like Instagram or others? We are not making the inquiry in real time. It would take too long. But if you want, you can stop the video here and try to do it. It would be an excellent exercise. What I will do is just give some examples of different elements of the schema I mentioned before. Here you have some possible derived questions and possible pre-existent answers, a diamond that can be accessed. What media could provide them? Okay, students, the first thing they do is looking on the internet. Some of them also contacted some experts they knew about Facebook or about some mathematical tools to forecast. In the students' milieu, there was also some previous knowledge about Facebook. Students already have a lot of knowledge about Facebook, and also knowledge about elementary mathematical tools to do the forecast, like elementary functions, Excel graphs, etc. During the inquiry, this milieu will be enriched because the students and the teacher, they will incorporate the new elements elaborated during the process. Here you can see some of the possible questions that can be derived from the initially generating questions at different moments of the inquiry. You will see that there are new entities that appear, like monthly active users, called the mouse, which raise new questions about its definition. What are they? How are they calculated or measured? Also, one needs to make decisions about the structural organization of the data, the variables to consider, if directly the data or the rate of change. This question-answers dialectic can be represented as a question-answer map, which provides a material, graphical or written representation of the possible paths opened by the generating question. Not all of them are taken, and some can be more developed than others, depending on the resources available. But we need a way to describe and to have them all at a time. Another essential element of the inquiry dynamics is the media-milieu dialectic. It corresponds to the interplay between the new information obtained and its testing through previously available means in the milieu. For instance, data from different sources can be confronted to see if they coincide. The raw data can initially be modeled using elementary functions. And then we can also check if the small forecast corresponds to reality. The comparison of the model will produce provisional answers and raise new questions, requesting more information to be searched in the media about forecasting errors or other possible forecasting techniques. where what is new is then confronted to the old through a process enriching the milieu and generating new demands. This dialectic is a dynamic of the process. We use the following schema, called the Herbartian schema, to represent the elements that appear in the inquiry process. In the beginning, we have a didactic system focused on a generating question Q0, and at the end, we will obtain a final answer A hard. To elaborate A hard, the didactic system creates a milieu M, and we will symbolize it like this. This milieu includes different elements: derived questions, labeled answers, these A diamonds, data, A, D, and other types of objects, including material ones. The milieu M evolves during the inquiry process. Its dynamics is described in terms of dialectics. We have already seen the questions-answers dialectic, where question Q are approached with the help of previously established answers A diamond. In turn, the study of these answers raises new questions that nourish the inquiry process. We can here see the research and study process, which are fed back one to another. So there is research of answers and a study to raise new questions, etc. The media-milieu dialectic is another fundamental driving force of the inquiry process. A very first gesture when one approaches a question is to look for available answers. It is rare to find a ready-to-use answer for the specific generating question, but it's highly likely to find pieces of answers elaborated by others that are available in different sources or media. These pieces of answers, elaborated to address other questions, need to be deconstructed and reconstructed with the means available in the milieu. There are other dialectics that help describe the dynamics and momentums or stagnations of studying research paths, like the inscription, the individual collective, ones with a funny name, which is the parachutist and the truffle seeker. Well, those interested can find more about this in the references. We have this Herbartian schema. What are its uses? Do we really need it? Okay, first of all, it helps design future inquiry process. This is why we use it a lot. And also it helps analyzing those that have already taken place. Given an observed or designed inquiry process or a teaching and learning process, we can use the elements of the schema to raise questions, like, what is the generating question Q0? Where does it come from? Who poses it? How and why? What kind of final answer A hard is required and how? To whom is it addressed? How will it be assessed? How will it be used, if it will be used? What is there in the available milieu M at time 0, at time 1, at time 2? How can this milieu evolve? And who makes it evolve? What are the derived questions? How are they raised? By whom? Is always a teacher who raises the questions, or does the teacher let the students raise the questions? What media can be accessed? What answers A diamond can be found? How can these answers be validated, tested against the milieu? And by whom? In all this work, how do teachers and students share responsibilities? Who does what? As you see, it is difficult to spontaneously raise these questions if one does not have a theoretical model like the Herbartian schema to rely upon. You see how theory is a tool for questioning, and they say this, that there's nothing more practical than a good theory. Well, we can also use the schema to describe teaching and learning processes that usually take place, and then look at the importance given to the different dialectics. For instance, in a typical university course based on lectures and tutorials, usually the generating question of the inquiry does not appear at the beginning. The teacher is the main media, and it provides already elaborated answers to the class to integrate them into the milieu, hypothetically, with some auxiliary objects, few new questions and data. At the end of the process, the didactic system gets an answer, a heart, which is the labeled answer initially established by the teacher or by the syllabus. In a problem-solving activity, the generating question is present, the problem to solve, but the media is usually absent. We do not allow students to ask or search information outside the class. In school context, students are often required to solve a problem without any search for already available answers, without any questioning of experts or looking on the internet. At most, the teacher plays the role of the media to provide some information when needed. And there are also fake inquiries. That is, generating questions aiming at the construction of an already established praxeology. In this case, even if there is a generating question Q0, this question is not the real stake of the inquiry. What is important, and students are aware of it, is the praxeology that helps answer the question. Here is the quotation to see how Yves Chevallard depicts these fake inquiries. If we come back to our starting point, we can now find a new use of the Herbartian schema. It helps better imagine what possible teaching and learning strategies can appear in the paradigm of questioning the world, which, as I said, extends the paradigm of visiting works. And also, it shows its limitations. The main issue then is to study the didactic ecology of the inquiry process in the old paradigm we live, to better know the conditions that facilitate the functioning of the new paradigm, the paradigm of questioning the world. In doing so, a crucial aspect is to learn about the constraints that hinder and can even impede the new forms of didactic processes to take place. Our research team have been working on this type of questions for many years now, discovering some of the changes needed, those that are possible, and those that seem to require more drastic modifications of the current educational systems. We studied the new roles of teachers and students, the new didactic contract, and we try to elaborate new didactic devices and resources to foster it. Something that appears is a critical change in the role assumed by knowledge in the paradigm of questioning the world. Knowledge works are not important per se, but only to the extent that they provide new answers to the question we ask. We are not visiting works that we do not need. And of course, the need of these works has to be regularly reconsidered. This is clearly different from curriculum definers that establish sequences of contents, sequences of answers, instead of sequences of questions or sets of questions. However, the choice of the generating questions and the new form of the curricula, which is a very important problem in the new paradigm of questioning the world, are not the only crucial issues. There is also an important question about the final answers, a heart. Because to avoid fake inquiries, we need important enough generating questions, but also important enough obtaining answers. So for the generating questions to be important, it is essential to ask what an acceptable final answer could be. Why is it necessary for the didactic system? What its destiny will be, and how it would become a means for future inquiries. Therefore, a new pedagogical and epistemological culture needs to be elaborated, and this is not a trivial enterprise. I have just raised some crucial open questions for research in didactics about the new paradigm of questioning the world. Besides, let us consider other frequently asked questions that you could use as the starting point of your own inquiry. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you soon in the next module.